Okay, guys, thanks for joining us today for the second MMA educational seminar. I am Brian Chandler. I'm a board member with MMA and I'm on the Education and Mentorship Committee. I own Commonwealth Public Relations, which we are a sponsor of today's program. And we're a full service PR firm assisting companies and organizations in the marine industry with their PR, marketing, and social media needs. And excited to sponsor today's event. If you're interested in joining our committee, we'd love to hear from you. It's a great opportunity and we have a lot of fun. Let's go over some housekeeping notes for today's presentation. If you would, keep yourself muted during the presentation so there's no accidental background noises. I heard the dog bark a minute ago, which is super fun. I know my pup's here just waiting to bark at the right time too. But please add your questions to the chat section, and the chat button is located at the top of the Teams window. So you'll see it there, and as we go through the presentation, if you have a question, just drop it into the chat and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Also, if you would like to see just the presentation a little bit larger on your screen and not everybody who's attending, there is a pop-out button. That's at the top of the Teams window as well, where the menu is right almost in the middle of your screen. So you can click that and you will just see the slides for the presentation, and then you'll hear our presenter. And for our presenter for today, I'm excited to introduce you to our speaker, Erin Urban. And Erin is a certified professional success coach. She is a member of the Forbes Coaches Council and founder of More Impact Coaching, which is based just outside of Houston in the Houston area. And the company is an Up Solutions brand. Erin brings just a recognized career in the industry for coaching and career success. She's recognized as a top 15 career and success coach in Houston. And she also hosts a live chat show called Career Coffee Chat. She has a best-selling book called Elevate Your Career, More Impact, More Income. And so I'm excited to introduce you guys to Erin today as she talks about how we can elevate our careers by making more impact with less stress, which I know is something that we can all benefit from. So Erin, if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Brian. And I'm looking forward to discussing how to elevate your impact and your career today, and without, by the way, sacrificing your well-being or your sanity. And I'm also excited to share how to spot, getting ahead of myself there, how to spot potential roadblocks and how to overcome them. Now, many, many years ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was a young professional overachiever. Let me know if you can relate to that in the chat. If you are, and I'm also talking to fellow overachievers out there. And I believe that working hard would move me up the ladder. All it really did was move me into more hard work. One fine spring morning, much like this one, I waltzed into my performance review expecting the usual pat on the back and no real raise, unfortunately, only to hear these words. Erin, while you're a top performer, we have some concerns. Now, those last three words are not what you want to hear in your performance review, my friends. Turns out that my work hard ethic wasn't all that I needed to focus on. Shock. Thanks to the intervention of my mentor at the time and a few simple shifts that I strategically made, this story has a happy ending, and I was given a company-wide leadership role in just a few months, in fact. Now, what's interesting is this graphic here, which I call the Elevate Your Career process. This is a result of that experience, years of researching professional success, personal accomplishments, and client results. Now, today we'll be focusing on a few key areas out of this. One of those is around clarity, finding clarity, becoming and elevating your self-awareness so you can have that clarity, and most important, identifying your ideal path and how to leverage a proven growth system to elevate your presence, stand out, and be noticed and move up within your industry and or your profession. So what we'll be focusing on primarily is the evolving workplace, work-life balance, and elevating your career. Because even the most driven, smart professionals experience unique challenges in this evolving work environment, and what I call the never normal. Now, we'll focus on these three areas from a process to help you increase your impact and income without stress and hassle. So let me know if that's exciting for you. Now, what we're poised on the brink of is a very exciting and terrifying time. When we're talking about the evolving workplace, what we're seeing in changes both culturally, socioeconomically, it is exciting and terrifying all at the same time. Because we're poised on the brink of authoring a new age of mankind, and change takes a toll on our systems. And much like our current work ecosystem must shift in order to connect to the future of humanity, we also must shift our strategies and how we present ourselves in said ecosystem. So these are what's on tap for the future of work based on what I see in my 8-ball here, peered into the 8-ball. I'm just kidding. Based on what I know as a social psychologist, behavioral scientist, this is what we're seeing right now. Moving into the future of work, we are in what I call the never normal because the pendulum's still swinging and we haven't necessarily come to a more steady state. Now, as you probably already know, gig economy is back. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on that, but it's back with a vengeance. And full-time roles will shift into more contract work as the pressure to have more flexible workforce increases. Oop, I'm getting ahead of myself again. My clicker has gone crazy. Remote work isn't going away. Big shock there, even though some people want it to. Now, our current corporate structures are based on very archaic fear-based leadership hierarchical models, which is a mouthful to say, but they quite simply don't translate into the future of work, nor do the expectations of newer generations gel with this very old model. Now we're shifting to a more autonomous model, a more autonomous workforce with more contract work, with the rare exception. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, virtual reality is becoming a reality, as you probably already know, thanks to up-and-coming generations and the need to feel in person without being in person. Right now, we're in that ugly state of, I want to be remote, but I get more done around people, but I want to be remote. Yeah. So virtual reality is here to save the day and step in and give you that in-person feeling without being in person. Because after all, we've all had a taste of freedom of being away from the office, and for some it was a relief. They could tolerate their coworkers better, and for others it was bittersweet. We acknowledge that humans collaborate better in person. That's just how we've evolved. Now, the curveball here is, my friends, there is two different, very diverse mindsets around how we want to live and work, moving into the future of work and how we're evolving as a culture, as a socioeconomic structure. One is what I call the return to your roots. Now, this isn't everyone. Some people are like, yay, tech, let's move into virtual reality and put on those cool glasses or whatever it's going to look like moving forward. Others, they're not so thrilled, even the younger generations. So we'll see a division, if you will. Some people are returning to the roots, doing everything they can to move away and get out of this urban chaos, while others, they're going away from the urban chaos in a different manner by simply choosing their own reality. So that's what we have on tap for the future. Now, what's important is for us to strike a balance because, my friends, we're still human and we have evolved for thousands of years to where we are today. Our modern technology, the stresses we're experiencing are not even a speck on that timeline yet. So we haven't evolutionarily wise caught up to what we're experiencing right now. Smart devices, etc. Yeah, not wired for that. So before we dive into how to position yourself for professional success in this very evolving, changing workplace, there are a few considerations for our uncertain socioeconomic times. One, we're all experiencing a little bit of what you call disaster fatigue. Now let me know in the chat if you all have heard of disaster fatigue. affects a lot of things. It affects your motivation, it affects your energy levels, your cognitive function, how well you think, your emotional set point, how you feel, and your mindset. So disaster fatigue is a real thing. It was really interesting, particularly in America. We have this work hard, play hard ethic, which has its pros and cons. And we like to say, oh, yeah, there was a pandemic. Let's get going. Let's put the pedal down, pedal to the metal. Let's go, let's go. And that's exactly what our brain and body is saying it doesn't want. So right now, we're still working through this fatigue that we all have at some level. We all have disaster fatigue. And what that is because our brains and bodies simply aren't built to handle prolonged periods of uncertainty. So you've been feeling off, please don't be too hard on yourself. Your brain is literally not designed to handle this, what we're going through right now. So what we'll talk about right now is getting some clarity and some self-awareness. So let me know if you can relate to this. Brain has too many tabs open. In my experience, high achievers are 10 times more likely to sacrifice self or put themselves last. While that's changing rapidly, fortunately, the modern version of self-care tends to put some people off. And the good news is you don't need to have a week-long, month-long retreat, be a yoga guru, or be hedonistically self-absorbed to easily access a healthy well-being strategy that sets you up for career advancement. Now, why are these two connected? Most of us are getting an idea that our mindset is driven part and part by how we're treating ourselves and what we're doing for our own physical well-being and mental well-being. Because if we're unclear, if we're cluttered in our mind, if we don't have focus and we can't concentrate, well, then chances are you're not going to be able to respond well to stimuli in your environment. That's how we were designed. So if you can't respond well to your stimuli, chances are you're not going to make good choices. And that's not a good idea when it comes to elevating your career. Not really. So we have some comments here. Someone said, yes, I'm familiar with the concept of disaster fatigue. I'm sure we're all looking forward to strategies to push through the fatigue. I have news for you, Shelby. We're not going to be pushing through anything. You know, that language, that pushing through, that's so American, true grit. And what's interesting is research has found that true grit, people who believe in pushing through things, is actually the enemy of resilience. Yes, and we're going to learn some strategies about how to do that, not push through, but also gain more resilience in a healthy, balanced, and most importantly, simple way, as well as how that feeds into your career advancement strategy and finding more clarity, more confidence, and more creativity in your life. So if that sounds fun to you, give me a thumbs up or just, do it virtually. Because personal well-being is non-negotiable, particularly now. The rate of change is too fast for our brains and bodies to assimilate. That's what we're experiencing right now. So this is what I know for sure. Anyone can elevate their career, elevate their impact with less stress. The methods are actually very simple to implement. And you need the right map with a supportive mindset, not one that's going to sabotage you in the process. Take, for example, this is my client, Steve. He went from going nowhere to 6 figures. And as he said, when he met me, it was really interesting. He was very lost. He didn't have a path. He didn't have a strategy. He didn't even know who he was, because he'd gotten bad feedback like I had gotten many, many moons ago, but he didn't handle it different. He was like nobody. And after he started working with me, I'm proud to report that now he has gone through 2 promotions and he has a better work-life balance. And he's now developing leaders in his own right. So I'm extremely proud of Steve and what he's been able to accomplish. Now, here's the deal. As I shared in my Forbes article, 7 self-care strategies of successful leaders, you can't get what you don't have. And if you don't practice some sort of well-being and intentional action towards getting your foundation solid so then you can build upon it. It's just like building a building. If your foundations aren't well put together or they're a little shaky, it's very difficult to actually build upon that. Things will fall apart. So we're constantly under stress and we're not doing something intentional about this. We can start to evolve bad behaviors like like lack of listening, overanalysis, failure to make decisions, fearful or angry, emotional decision making. We've actually also found that continual stress reduces one's IQ by up to 30 points. So, in order to be smarter, well, let's talk about what that looks like. If I can find my mouse. So I developed actually a strategy how to do this very, very quickly. And yes, you will get a link to this. You'll be able to access this very quick video that talks about what I call the power pause. It's an extremely simple process. And what it does is it leverages your body to clear the clutter of the mind. It's almost like pressing reset button on your computer. Clears your cache and functions better. Very similar to that process. Now, if you'd like to walk along through this with me, I'm going to do the first part. It's a two-step process, extremely quick. I'll do the first part. It's what's called a physiological sigh. And it's not just it's not one of those. It is an intentional sigh. And what it does is an intentional breathing exercise that exhales the what they call residual CO2 at the very bottom of your lungs. When that stays around for too long, it signals to your brain and body that you've got stress and we need to go into survival mode. And you don't want that, because when you're in survival mode, my friends, you cannot access two very important parts of your body. They are shut out. And one of those is curiosity and the other is creativity. Doesn't happen. I'm sure you're familiar with the term emotional hijacking. The limbic system takes over. It's a mess. So in order to get more clarity and calm, all you have to do is inhale completely through the nose. So your lungs are full, and then open your mouth and take a last bit of breath in through the mouth and exhale slowly through the mouth. You can do it with me if you'd like. So we inhale through the nose. One of the things it does, it also, as a side benefit, releases a lot of positive hormones. And you feel better afterwards. You're like, oh, that's nice. So pop in the chat how you feel. If you did that, let me know how you feel. Because it is incredibly important. And here's why it is incredibly important. I'm not going to walk through all of these with you. But in addition to the positive feeling, the clearing of the mind, and refreshing the brain, you can sustain a higher output for longer periods of time. Research has found that after about an hour and a half to 2 hours, our productivity was in order to maintain that more peak performance up here, it's important to take breaks about every hour and a half to 2 hours. I take up to 3 to 4 mini breaks every day and do just what I did there, in addition to the second part, which is in the video. And yes, you'll get a link to that. Not only does it make you calmer, open up your creative mind again, and naturally more confident flows with that, but all these other benefits. It elevates your IQ, it makes you smarter, it allows you to connect to more opportunities because you have clarity, you become more resilient, and it takes less than 5 minutes. What? Yes, and it's proven to work for pretty much anybody as long as you have a healthy and normal brain and body balance. Okay. Now, if you don't, please see a licensed therapist or a certified professional. But in normal situations, for most people, this is gold, and it's incredibly simple. It's my gift to you. So you can now do what's most important for you in your life and in your career, and getting more impact with less stress. And you're thinking to yourself, maybe, wait, that's it? I just got to breathe? Yes, and there's some potential physical work too there. That's just, helping your mind focus on your physical body to bring yourself very present, because your physical body is always present. But yes, literally, that is it. True story. Okay, minor segue here. True story. I was presenting at the Gulf Coast HR Symposium last year. Went through the very same presentation, more or less, this part of it about the physiological sigh and easy access to well-being. And one lady raised her hand. She said, wait a minute, this is all we have to do to feel better and dump the cash and get less stress. I was like, yeah, that's it. She goes, my company just spent $250,000 a quarter to get a licensed therapist to come in and talk to the employees. So basically this is like a coach employee contract. If you're feeling stressed, you call the therapist, because they keep overworking everybody. So this is their plan for well-being. I can't make this up. So what they've done is, they're overworking everybody. They hire this therapist group to come in and talk to their employees about how overworked they are so they can keep overworking them. That's their well-being plan. She goes, it's nuts. And this is, I said, yeah, it's free. Have fun. It's golden. So let's talk about more impact with less stress, because what we want to do is identify your ideal path and leverage a growth system. So now that you have more clarity, you can think, you can breathe, you access your creative mind. And as creative professionals, you know how incredibly important that is. So if you've had a little bit of writer's block, or what I call the muse isn't talking to you as much as it has been in the past, or you struggle a little bit more, this is why disaster fatigue gets right in the way. It pummels that muse, knocks it out, gives it a black eye. And so you might be struggling because when you're under prolonged extreme stress, your brain literally cannot access the curious part of your mind or the creative part of your mind. And why is that? Evolution. I mean, think about it. When the caveman was faced with the charging saber-toothed tiger, he wasn't sitting there thinking, I wonder how fast that's going. No, that didn't happen. He's like, I got it. Fight, flight, or freeze. Usually the first two. When your tiger's charging at you. So that is all the brain is equipped with when it comes to dealing with stress. Fight, flight, or freeze. And chances are most of us in our modern society are in some phase of that, because it's not an all or nothing. We're in some phase of that. So if you're struggling making decisions, can't prioritize, you might be in the freeze mode, right? So getting out of that, getting out of survival mode just by simply practicing the physiological side, go, and yes, you will get a link to that video. Practice the video. It takes literally 2 minutes. I mean, it's insane. Do that a couple times a day and you're golden. I have managed a massive amount of stress just by this process. So then you access your creative mind to leverage this part of it, which is also important to elevate your career, to elevate your impact, and elevate your income. So what we'll talk about today is how to identify your ideal path, target your career, and implement a growth system that's proven to work. Now, when we talk about identifying your ideal path, that's extremely impossible to do when you're in stress survival mode. You cannot see it. Just cannot become clear to you because that part of the brain is locked out. That's why we do the first part first, okay? But this, identifying your ideal path, is basically an intersection of your strengths, interests, and expertise. Okay, so I'll say that again. It's the intersection of your strengths, interest, and expertise. There's not two of those. It must be all three of them. And that's really important, because when you're leveraging your strengths, that includes your natural gifts and talents, your innate talent, that is incredibly important for career success. Okay, professional success hinges upon you being able to leverage those strengths and your natural inclinations. You may have been taught otherwise. You may have been taught to identify your gaps and try to fill them all. That's not a good use of your energy or time. Knowing where you have opportunities is important, and also being able to build upon your natural gifts and talents is incredibly important and key to you seeing professional success. Your interest, well, that's kind of obvious. If you're not interested in it, you won't put the energy into it. So of course, that's part of the equation. And then leveraging your expertise, because no client who works with me, when it comes to identifying their ideal path, particularly, do we say, oh, you have all this expertise, we'll just ditch that. Unless someone wants to drastically reinvent themselves, which typically is not the case. So we're honoring your expertise, we're leveraging your strengths and your interest, because, and here's the other part of it. Now, for years, we've kind of ignored this part, but it's extremely important. We must align who we are with what we do and let that drive what we do. So your core gifts, your values, your life priorities informs what you do, not the other way around. And that's what we do typically in America. We're like, oh, we have this career, so let me make my life fit around that. No, that doesn't work. And what does that do? It leads to burnout and resentment. That's not healthy. So we have to align what we do with who we are. And when we're thinking about that, we want to leverage the 80-20 rule. I'm sure you've probably heard about that. 80% of your activities should be ideally something that gives you energy, or at least it's a neutral, right? It doesn't drain you or give you energy. It's a neutral thing. But it's not something you're going to be drained by. So 80% of your activities ideally should be in that more energy giving or neutral zone. And then only 20% or less, even better, less, are energy drainers, like paying taxes. No one likes to do that. That's a drainer. Unless you're a math person like my husband, who does Sudoku for fun. But even he doesn't like paying taxes. So let's see, someone said, this is so important point. It's key to align what we do with who we are. Absolutely, yes. It's absolutely key, because eventually, and this is what will happen. Typically, if you go to vocational school or college, you graduate, you start on your career path, and then you fall victim to what I call open door syndrome. You follow one open door, and the next open door, and the next open door, and the next open door. One day you wake up about, in your 30s or 40s, sometimes later, and you go, where am I? And why am I here? And I don't like what I'm doing. What do I do next? I have no idea. And then you give me a call. So we don't want that. We want to make sure, yes, give me a call. I want that. Of course, absolutely. Call me anytime you want. And we also want to make sure we're aligning what we do with who we are. And a key to that is not forgetting our core self, right? And making sure that what we're doing are actions that give us energy, because that's a huge clue into where our innate talents and gifts are. Another one, if you're not sure what your gifts are, probably you already do if you're creative professionals. Maybe you have some that have kind of flown under the radar. I mean, naturally they will, because they're your gifts. They're going to come natural to you. You don't even have to think about it. And if you've ever had anybody say, well, you do such and such so easily. That's so hard for me. It's probably a gift. And it could be something super sexy or not. It doesn't really matter, but it's a gift. So embrace it, my friend. And also, here's the other thing. When you're thinking about identifying your professional path, an ideal path for you, ditch the 3 to 5 year plan. That's terrible. It's a terrible idea. For one thing, it works counter to how your brain actually functions. Your brain has a hard time thinking that way. So the best way to think about the long term, the trajectory, identifying the target, is to put yourself in the future. Imagine yourself at the fruition of your life, and you're looking back over your life. What do you want to say that you've done? What do you want to do? What kind of fun activities do you want to? How do you want to feel? And when you're thinking about that feeling, what types of activities promote that feeling for you? Right? That's the best way. Whenever you're thinking about designing a project or moving forward, it doesn't really work. Most project managers will tell you, well, we have to know when the end game is, and then we back up the process. And usually then we find out we should have started this 6 months earlier, but hey. We always design from the end point in mind and work our way back. So that is key to identifying what type of path will suit us best. Now, chances are, if you worked through this with me as I was talking and you thought about what you want to experience in your life and how you want to feel, it was probably around your life and didn't have much to do with your career, right? Okay, great. You're normal. Congratulations. Now, how does your career fit into that picture? How does it either support those feelings and those activities and or feed into those feelings and activities? And most importantly, my friends, what boundaries do you need to set to help you achieve that work-life balance you need? Because here's the thing, and I'll talk more about this in a minute in detail. We have in America this work hard, play hard ethic. And we tend to forget the last part and just focus on the first part. Work hard, work hard, work hard. And we've been doing it so long, we don't know how to do anything else. I mean, through 2020, half of us use it as a coping mechanism. Well, let's just work 15 hours a day because that's a great idea. I don't know what else to do. No, actually, that doesn't help you elevate anything except elevate into more hard work. And it's not just because that's how I experienced it. That's research, my friend. So what work-life balance do you need? What's that boundary look like for you? And we'll talk more in a minute about why that may not you probably already know. We'll talk more in a minute about why it's not happening. Now let's shift into targeting based on where you want to go. So you've identified your ideal path and we want to target our career. First thing we want to do is perform what I call a gap analysis. Sounds terrible, sounds very mathematical, and it's important to understand, okay, I'm here, I want to go there. What's the steps I need to take to get from here to there? Very simple. What are those basic steps? And you want to leave some fluidity in there. You want to leave some room for movement, because here's the deal. If we hyper plan, we get a very detailed plan. We know this step, and I know who I'm going to talk to, when it's going to happen. You have all the details. You like this plan. We've all heard it. You need to have a plan. Having an outline is great and absolutely critical, because otherwise you won't have anything to lean into. However, having a hyper detailed plan is actually counterproductive. Here's why. Try to condense this. Okay. Your brain receives around 11 million bits of information per second. It only processes 4 to 14 bits. Not 1,400, not 14,000. No, 4 to 14 bits. That's a huge delta. Now, what does it choose to prioritize over all these other bits? By the way, the part that manages that process is called the reticular activating system, which I won't say again because it's difficult. But that's a part that manages that process. And there are a few unlucky people who are born without one that works. And they live very constrained lives. So you need this filter because we receive a massive amount of information per second. We don't need to process all of it. Well, how does our brain focus on what to filter out and what to filter in? Well, your mindset, your belief system, what you focus on, that's what it decides. So if you create this hyper detailed plan, you're not leaving any room for other opportunities. So your brain wants to prove you right, by the way. That's one of its jobs. It has to prove you right. Whether you are or not, it's going to prove you right. So it's looking at this plan and going, well, that's an opportunity, but it doesn't match. So we're going to filter that out. You don't want that. So you don't want a hyper detailed plan, because while you may achieve what you want to achieve, it may not serve you in the long run, and it may not even fit what you wanted by the time you get there, and it also takes a lot longer, and it doesn't leave any room at all for happy surprises. And I've been studying professional success for a really long time. 90% of professional success comes through happy surprises. And that's coming from someone who loves to plan. I love to plan. So this is a big deal for me. The next thing you need to think about, other than not having a structure, but not too much of a detailed one, is who can help you get where you are now to where you're going. A lot of us think in terms of networking and networking events, and that's fine. But also, who are your supporters? Who is already there that can talk to you? And also, obviously, professional organizations like this one. How can we leverage this? And this is what I call leverage, okay? And what certifications do you need to help you get to those stepping stones? Future of work, by the way, demands a lot more certifications. We're a certification happy society, yeah. Then get visible, connect to leadership goals. That's another thing that some people don't necessarily think about when they're thinking about their gifts, their talents, their strengths. They don't really think, okay, well, this is me. They don't really necessarily think, okay, how can I connect awesome me and a brilliant me to what the leadership wants to accomplish in this organization? When you do that, my friends, magic happens. Because when you can connect your gifts and talents, your true gifts and talents, to what the leadership wants to achieve, and then make a business case out of how you can provide value to the company and still getting value for yourself to further business goals, game changer, alert, game changer. Yeah, most people don't do this. They don't even do it when they're asking for a promotion. It is critical. Making a business case that presents your gifts and talents, the value you bring to the organization, and how that organization will benefit from your said gifts and talents is a game changer. And that's one of the reasons how I was able to go from we have concerns to a leadership role, company-wide, culture impacting. Yeah, I took a risk and applied for a job I knew I wouldn't get. because I knew I would get access to the right ears. And when the CEO asked me nicely why in the world I applied for this position, I told him, I said, I'm not here to waste your time. And I know you only know me for what I do every day. And you're not necessarily aware because no one goes around with a resume tattooed on their forehead of what else I can do. He goes, oh, really? Well, tell me. So I told him. And he made a role for me. There you go. So sometimes taking strategic risk really do pay off. And what bite-sized actions can you take to increase your industry visibility? Another thing I did in the next evolution after that one was increasing my industry visibility. And I kind of fell into it by accident. Now we know the term is influencer. Yeah, sounds very, I don't know. It sounds a little overused. And some of the same tactics are still valid. Being better known helps you get more traction in the industry. Okay. Know this, most successful people don't just rely on talent, timing, or luck. They're also consistent. So being consistent is key to success. But here's what's going to get in your way. The number one career roadblock. I told you I would talk about this. Working really hard and expecting people to notice. As I mentioned in my best-selling book, not helpful, actually, on multiple levels. And this might sound like my work should speak for itself. I do an outstanding job, so people will notice. I exceed expectations, and I will get a promotion, a raise, insert appropriate reward there. That doesn't always happen. What makes you think that they don't believe you like working hard? What makes you think that they're not so distracted, particularly now, that they even notice? It doesn't work. Hope is not a professional success plan. What typically happens here is we get stuck in our current role and or passed over for promotions. We become the firefighter or the fixer for the team. We stay so busy we can't build our stinking network in the first place, and we often suffer from burnout and or career exhaustion. Sometimes we even sacrifice our career for the job because this tends to go hand in hand with being an overachiever and the overachieving trap. And it's also close cousins to being reluctant to claim our own achievements, because if anybody gives you an atta girl or atta boy or atta you, you go, oh, that was just, and you deflect. My friends, if you don't get anything else out of this talk today, my sharing with you, please, when someone gives you a compliment, just say thank you. That's it. You don't need to rate, justify, or qualify. Just say thank you. And your life will be much better. Like my client also, Amy, she also has a story, a great story. She called me up, oops, and there I go again. She called me up one day and she was so proud. She was so proud. She got this new job in this new industry and she moved to Ohio, and I was really excited for her because she was excited and therefore I'm excited. She calls me up, she goes, Erin, I know we haven't talked for a while because I fear she's moving, all that. She goes, I got this job, and within a week, two of the managers quit, and I am doing so awesome. And I'm like, here it comes. I took over all of their work too, and I'm making it happen. So my question, of course, as a coach was like, well, that's great. That's great. I'm glad you're making it happen. What's the conversation you're having with your manager about you moving up, getting compensated? Obviously, you're making it happen so you can do that level of job. So what's the conversation? Oh, I'm sure he'll notice. Good news is, after some thoughtful, intentional coaching and guidance, she did accept a leadership position and got a big raise. So yay. Oh boy, proud to be overworked. The problem with working hard and hoping people will notice. Oh, let's see, someone said, Regina said, Dab's job's good. Work hard and you will be rewarded. Nope, I need a mentor, an elevator speech. Yes, absolutely. All the things. And ask my bosses to help me share my wins. Amen, sister. I think you should be up here. But here's the thing about working hard, and hoping people will notice. People are so distracted and busy, they don't notice anything that doesn't leap out and bite them right now. They're overwhelmed, disaster fatigue. Hello. And a lot of them are just happy that you do such great things that they don't need to babysit you. Truth. You also make your leadership look great. So why should they go through the trouble of trying to train someone else? In fact, I had another client who recently connected with me for coaching. And she said, oh, I had enough. So I just had a conversation with my leadership. And they told me, well, we don't know why you're wanting to move up into a leadership position because you do such a great job right where you are. Really? Fantastic. So your success strategy, my friends, is meet expectations, but do not constantly exceed them, only when strategically savvy to do so. So when you know it's in your strength zone, you're not overstretching yourself, you can have healthy boundaries, and you're leveraging your gifts and talents, and it will get you the visibility. So do the checklist, right? Visibility, yeah. Strength zone, okay. Do I want to do it? Is this something I am even interested in? Does it align with where I want to go? You can do a lot of great things. And if it's not going to serve you long term, you could be just spinning your wheels, or worse, branding yourself for something that you don't want to do. There was another client of mine. So I keep getting shoved into these change management roles, and I want to do this. She signed up for the wrong project. Set clear boundaries, speaking of, and this one might be a little sticky. Allow the ball to drop when possible. I know. The thing about it is, when you allow the ball to drop when possible, it's not your ball, okay? This is what typically happens. We're picking up someone else. We're enabling underperformers, right? Or we're enabling the company to continue not to hire another resource. When that happens, if it's an underperformer, their ball, maybe it drops. Or when it's a under-resourced problem, you can present your leadership of choices. Great, fine, I can do this, this and this and this. We'll have to wait. Well, you need to do all of it. I have a family that I need to see, and I have commitments too. If they can't understand that, maybe a different place will. Establish your professional goals and communicate them often as reasonable. Now, let's see, I think it was Gina just mentioned, I asked my bosses to help me share my wins. Absolutely. You know what? You can do that too. You can actually help create a culture. A lot of times, it is true, as we evolve as humans, we look to our leadership even unconsciously, by the way. You will start to pattern your behavior after your leadership even unconsciously, so be intentional about that one if you don't want to do that. Now, we also like to say, well, leadership isn't doing this, so I can't. No, everyone is a leader. My friends, you have vastly more impact than you give yourself credit for. We all do. In fact, even the person who was happy there was a pandemic and we were in isolation, maybe not happy there was a pandemic, but I was happy that we're all in isolation. It doesn't even like going to the grocery store. Even that person, research has shown that they will impact over 20,000 people in their lifetime. You impact, my friend, much more people and much more about your life than you could possibly imagine. And we don't have necessarily time to go through all of it. I wish I could, because it would be a big game changer for you. You have so much more impact. So with all that being said, you can strategically, you can start to establish a culture that shares wins, and start meetings. You know what, can we share wins? So do you have a win, such and such? And then you come in the mix to share your win, right? So it's never just about you first, and you can start to establish that culture. Lauren says, do you know how deeply socialized I've been to not drop a ball? In all seriousness, that's a game changer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, dropping the ball strategically. Now, obviously, you don't drop every ball, because that would give us a brand that we don't want. And let's not enable bad behavior. So if Now, when we're back to speaking about professional goals and communicating them very often, you know, if your manager is not a supporter, find your supporters. I was in a role at one point in my career where my manager was actively a backstabber. I also am a smart person and went to make friends with his manager and his manager's manager. So not necessarily reporting to them directly, but I would stop by their offices and give them a casual update on what I'm working on. So they knew. They knew. They just still didn't fire him, but anyway, that was many years ago in oil and gas, and we don't need to go there. So very traditional organization. And if there's no room for you to move up in your organization, and you're not feeling appreciated, and you've done everything you can, well, there might be room for you somewhere else. And also note this, that moving up, as we know it, is not a requirement to lead a successful, happy career and happy life. It is not. You do not have to. That is what we are programmed to believe, that we have to move up, we have to move up, we have to make six figures, we have to da, 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 da. And it's very hard to break that programming because you have, my friends, been programmed like that since you were born. Birth. Are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer? Oh. That does not equal personal happiness and success. It's that success word is very subjective, and it's based on your definition, no one else's. So if you feel happy living in a camper in Colorado with your dog and going hiking, great. You do you, sunshine, because not too many people do. To move on. Also, really important to reevaluate your professional target regularly, so we're not falling victim to open door syndrome. We want to make sure what we do is aligned with who we are. And also get in the habit of keeping a running list of your kudos, your accomplishments, even if they're a part of your job. Resist the urge to diminish your accomplishments. Practice saying thank you, like I mentioned earlier, and keep a log of it. Think to yourself, if you're struggling with this, think to yourself, okay, if I didn't do my job well, what would happen? Or what wouldn't happen? Right? And I know in marketing, sometimes it's a little difficult to connect what we do to dollars, and sometimes not. So think about it. How can you put that in your calendar every quarter? Okay, I need to put in my kudos, make sure that I'm keeping track of what projects I'm working on and what the results are, because after time, it fades and it becomes harder to access that information. So what I wish for you, my friends, is reaching for what is possible instead of passable, because the mental programming that will get in the way of us doing any of these obviously strategic activities is this work harder mindset. What happens with the work harder mindset is that people more likely succumb to what I call the overachiever trap. They feel like they need to prove themselves. They have maybe a level of what's known as imposter syndrome, although that's not necessarily what it is. They seek to achieve perfection, maybe when that's not necessarily the expectation, so spending more energy than they really need to. And if that's you, you can feel left out in the workplace. I know that's certainly me. Few people can relate to you sometimes, and because you remind them of their own shortcomings. So humility is a trait. Work hard ethic is wonderful. The challenge with the work hard mindset is also, if that is your fundamental belief, success only comes as a result of working hard, right? That's your fundamental connection. If that's what your mental program is running, then typically what happens is, even if you work as hard as you can, that goalpost will always move. Because if it doesn't, that means you achieve something. That means you don't have to work hard anymore. That means that program that isn't valid. Well, we can't have that. So the goalpost always has to move. So we're our own worst enemy. So we don't even acknowledge those wins. Or if we do, we don't allow ourselves to embrace them for very long before we're moving on to the next thing. I mean, Americans are great about what next? What next? What next? Oh, you achieved that. Great. What are you planning next? Can I just embrace what I've achieved for 30 seconds? Jeez, people. Seriously. It's like that everywhere. I'm a retired professional competitive cyclist, not professional cyclist, but competitive cyclist. And after every race, oh, you won that criterium race? Great. What's your next goal? Eat, I don't know, sleep. How about that? So my friends, consider, are we programming ourselves in the wrong direction? And what work ethic did you see modeled for you when you were young? What do you believe about success and how it's obtained? And what gaps do you see? Because what do you fundamentally believe? You can have all the strategy and the great things. You can watch this 1,000 times. No, it won't do you any good if you don't have a supporting mindset. After this presentation, you will also get links to a host of great resources, in addition to my best-selling book, of course, its companion guide, and the Power Pause video, and more. And I'm looking forward to adding that value to you, my friends. Feel free to reach out. I hope you have enjoyed learning more about some elements of the Elevate Your Career process and that perspective. And feel free to reach out to me. You can scan this link, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I share a wealth of information every week on LinkedIn, unless I'm doing a wonderful presentation like this, getting to know you. And I want to hear your questions. So I hope you have been thinking about questions. Let's see. Do I have any tips or examples of ways to discuss your wins with humility? Best phrases to use, how much is too much, etc. Yes, most people are uncomfortable with self-promotion. It's because that's how we've been wired, because we've been told when you promote yourself, you're a bad person. You're bragging. That's not the case. Number one, sharing your wins is not bragging when done in a factual way. Let's break down bragging. Bragging is when you present information in an overblown and sometimes untrue fashion. That is not what you're doing. You're presenting your accomplishments in a factual way. If you have one-on-ones with your leadership, that's a great opportunity to present how you've accomplished and what you've accomplished. Also, creating a culture of sharing wins at the beginning of every meeting is a brilliant way to incorporate not only other people's wins, but your own as well. And the, some people call it a shout out program. There's different things that are called, but basically what it is when you give a kudo to someone, it's measurable and specific, smart, right? So it's specific, and that's either posted on an intranet or done in a meeting. So there's different formats to do that. As far as words are concerned, when you're presenting what you have done in a factual way, we don't need to necessarily worry about word choice, because you're presenting facts. So that's the most important mindset shift to make. Get self-promotion out of there, get sales out of there, get the whole bragging thing, get that out of there, because you're presenting facts, like talking about the weather. Facts. That's it. It's okay. It's okay to do that, and doing that well in advance of any sort of review period is also important, particularly if you're going for a promotion or a raise. So I'll just go ahead and preempt maybe that question if that's in your mind. Hey, I want to go for promotion or raise. When should I start talking about that? Way in advance. Okay, way in advance. And most people are doing it in the springtime, this time of year, February, etc. That's when they're creating the budget, is at the end of the year. So you want to have this conversation in the fall of the year prior to the promotion period, because you want to be in the budget. And knowing what I know about how most companies do this process, it's kind of ugly, but basically your manager has to go to bat and fight for you because they have this much money and I'll get a piece of it. So they got to fight. So giving them a business case with not only what you've accomplished, but what your plans are, your strategic plans. So you're presenting yourself as a leader. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's see here. I think the concept of self-promotion can also be unintentionally gendered. Men and women think about this differently. Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Lauren. Very, very much so. Men think about it less. And men start talking about their goals from like day one. Women think they're going to work hard and be noticed. And that's not necessarily the case. Typically, a lot more work goes to women than men. because of several things. One, women, no offense, guys, do it more. Not all cases, but we kind of do. And they're less likely to push back. And they're less likely to set their boundaries because women have a more nurturing aspect. That's how we're wired. Women are also less likely to promote themselves, and they're also vastly less likely to ask for a raise or promotion. And they're more inclined to whatever's given to them, go, oh, thank you, instead of negotiating. Negotiating is almost never happens. And so, yeah, I have an article about that if you want to reach out to me about how to negotiate your salary and or promotion. I'm happy to share that with you. How to start elevating your connections in the industry. Well, there's multiple different ways to do that. And now with remote work, it's a double-edged sword. The world is your oyster, and it's the world. Oh my gosh, where do I start? So start obviously where you know the key stakeholders are, and go there first. You're thinking about it kind of like a marketing strategy, like who's your ideal client? Same strategy. It's no different. It's the same methodology. You're thinking about your ideal client. So when you're thinking about elevating your career and getting, eyes on you, who's your ideal target and how can you market to them? Right? It's the same strategy. Where are they? The who, what, when, where. Who are they? Where do they go? Where are they? And when do I need to be there? Or what type of connection do I need to create with them? Now, not every industry is the same. I know for me, I kind of fell into the ability to become a industry leader. I'm trying to stay away from the word influencer because it is vastly overused. And this was years ago, and did totally by accident. Started, oh, this LinkedIn thing. Let me see what's going on there. Now LinkedIn is huge. What's very interesting, if you do want to use LinkedIn, and when you are a W-2 professional, you're much more likely to get more traction. And don't bother sharing photos. I'm not sure they're elevating video again. I know they downgraded it a lot in the past couple of years, as you all know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And stick to the emotion part of it. Like share, your, oh gosh, I learned this lesson, or this is some good. And don't be shy with the newsletters and the articles. Start going to conferences thinking about speaking if you'd like to. But be strategic about that. Let's see. Love this concept of working with your strengths. Do you have any tips for team members to better identify with the natural gift strengths? Yes, I do. I'm kind of biased because I did a lot of research on which work style assessments were the best, and I know assessments, bleh, they usually find the round bin. Nobody uses them, and that's because they're not trained how to be fair. Myers-Briggs is way too complicated. No. Some of them are too fluffy. You're a lion. Well, what the flip does that mean? I like DISC because superficially it's very simple and it's very complex behind the scenes, and you can get into quite some depth, but it's most easy to leverage within organizations to identify other people's styles. Here's where people get off the bus. They use it as a labeling system. It is not a labeling system. Everybody can shift around their core strengths area and their work style, and that helps people. When I'm working with teams specifically, I leverage DISC a lot. And there's a lot of questions here coming in, guys and gals. So I want to make sure I honor your time, and I'm happy to stay here, Katie, and answer questions.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Erin. This was a wonderful presentation. If we haven't met yet, I'm Katie Freeburn. I'm the committee chair for the Education and Mentorship Committee that's hosting today's webinar. Again, we want to thank Erin for the wonderful time she spent with us today, and special thanks also to Commonwealth PR, the MMA, and Brunswick for sponsoring the speaker and our webinar technology for today. Like you mentioned, there's a couple other questions. You all are welcome to stay on and continue, being cognizant of Erin's time, of course. We will send out a recording of the session today along with the deck. And if we miss any questions, we'll get those answered and send those out as well. Be on the lookout for our next seminar in Q3. And just as a reminder, all of our webinars, including the recent roundtable that we hosted, can be found on our YouTube channel and on the webinar page of the MMA website. That's all linked at the top of the chat. If you have any questions about how to get involved, please reach out to me or Brian, and we'd love to have you join us. So have a great week. Continue to chat if you'd like. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us since we are at the end of our time.
Thank you so much. And what I'm happy to do also, and Katie, let me know if it's possible, we can download the questions and then I can do a recorded video answering said questions if that works for everybody. That way you get back to your work day. Does that work?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. So just send me a copy of all the questions. It's such a pleasure seeing you all, my friends, today. Thank you for joining. Thank you to the MMA for having me. And a big shout out to Brian and Katie both for managing, coordinating this. Thank you so much.